Phone lines are open. Dial 384-2191.
We have made it one time around the calendar here. The first week of November is behind us now. We're on the second Friday of the month, and joining us in the WDLB studios for the Inside program is Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza. Good morning.
Good morning.
And who did you bring with you here? The muscle, you said, huh?
Yeah, I brought my muscle. You've been beating me up the last couple of weeks, the last couple of shows. So brought Pat Zapps, our assistant chief at the police department.
Well, now we can tag team him, Jeff. We'll.
So, hey, wait a minute.
We got Tom over here. We
couldn't even draw back in this studio. It's so small.
We'll figure it out.
We'll have to stumble.
It won't look the same when we're done. Let's just say that.
That would be a difference because it's been this way for a long time. So this time of the year, we are into, as we're talking right now, live on the radio and probably watching us here on video from Marshfield Media Access, that we're into the cold season now, and also the snow has come around, the first light amount anyway, and I tested my tires before I got to the intersection. Stopping wasn't the problem, pulling out was. And when you're coming along the road and you see somebody start out, it gets to be where you have to allow them time because they're in no man's land once they start to pull out from the intersection, and there's no place to go from there. And did you guys have a rash of incidents or any kind of uptick in?
I would say it was not that bad. Typically with the first snows, people tend to slow down a little bit till they get used to it. So, there's a little bit of fender benders and things. From what I understand, the county got hit a lot worse than we did. So they had some real problems out there.
I think when they build those confidences up and they feel like they can drive in, when we feel like we can drive in any weather conditions is when you start having more crashes. But being a little probably hypersensitive is a good thing early on. Well,
in the city, you don't hopefully get that much speed up that you're doing in the county roads. And
have you been out there recently?
No.
They do.
Who's they? That's me.
Yeah. There's your admission, Rick.
Oh, yep. Okay. Wait a minute.
This is recorded.
Statute of limitations now.
So much for the get out of jail free card you wish you still had.
Yeah. I'll bring my Monopoly money too to pay my fine. The county roads, getting up to those stop signs and coming through, it can be a rude awakening here that first time around, but hopefully everybody was in the city, maybe, like I said, pulling out and not being able to get out as quickly as you could was maybe the biggest issue that we had. How are your new trucks working for you? Is that a better solution for this kind of situation here in the winter?
Yeah, I think right now our whole fleet, as far as our first responders, are all either four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. It's the first time we've been able to say that in, probably ever. I don't think we've ever had our whole fleet of squads being, being able to handle this type of weather. I mean, they're even two-wheel drive vehicles, they make them in such a way to where the traction control and such really does help quite a bit. But having the four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive option is really handy, especially, for what we need. And, if we need to get somewhere and get there, safely, but in a prompt manner. But yeah, this will be the first winter that we've had all, even our K9 squads, all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive vehicles. So looking forward to it because it's never happened before.
You have a sports car or a sports type car too, don't you? One of the vehicles?
Yeah, we do. We have a Dodge Charger out there now.
I didn't notice it because it wasn't painted up and it wasn't obvious with the lights on, but when they come on, you notice.
Yeah, it's pretty bright.
Don't ask me how I know, right? All right, let's go to the phone. Let's go to the phone here. Jim, go ahead. You're on with Marshfield PD.
Yes. A day or so ago, I got a phone call from someone claiming to be with the Social Security offices and claiming that my Social Security number has been
compromised?
Compromised. There you go. That's the word. And I wonder if they'd heard of anyone else having something like that. They gave me a phone number to call, but I didn't call them.
Yeah, we actually did. We put something out on our Facebook page, but we had received a couple of calls regarding scam that was going on and hitting the area, saying that they were either from the city of Marshfield or the phone number that was coming up displayed on a caller ID displayed as a city of Marshfield, but they were trying to solicit Social Security numbers or maybe mentioning that there'd be a warrant put out for your arrest or something to that effect. And yeah, we tried to get notice out. So hopefully not many people fell victim to that. It's really hard to control what people give to unknown other people that are soliciting that information. But you did the right thing. You absolutely did the right thing by not falling for it or giving up your personal information.
Because I looked, they gave me a phone number to call, and I checked on it, and the phone number that they gave me was somewhere in Texas. You could tell by the area code.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you did the right thing by not calling it back or giving information. So good job.
As long as Jim is on the line here with this subject, what do you want them to do as far as letting you know? I mean, we often talk about burglaries. People say, well, not much was stolen or not, but then a pattern happens and suddenly you're seeing things happen. So do you want people to call you with scams?
Yeah, we do encourage people to call us. There's sometimes not a lot we can do other than just get that mass message out to everybody, letting them know that it's going on and it's hitting the area, and people, just telling people to not fall victim to it. If the IRS is ever going to reach out to you, they're going to send you something through U.S. Postal Service. They'll never call and try to, even the Social Security Administration, if there was some issues, they would make it a lot more legitimate. They wouldn't be putting a warrant out for your arrest. Any fines that they say that you will be given is usually not realistic. And lastly, they never involve local law enforcement. So if they ever say that local law enforcement is going to come and arrest you or going to arrest you on this warrant or whatever, I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I recently received a call in my office at work where they were threatening to do just that. The local law enforcement was going to come get me. Interestingly enough, when I started to ask questions back, it was followed by a profanity-laden tirade that was directed at me, and they hung up. So then I tried to call the number back, and the number was disconnected almost instantaneously. So, like Chief said, there's not a lot we can do with that because they're throwing these numbers out there on a real temporary basis. They're fishing for people to give them information. Absolutely do not do it. Give us a call so we can get the word out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Jim.
All right. Anybody listening here live on AM 1450 WDLB, give us a call, 384-2191, 384-2191, coming to you on Marshfield Media Access. You can watch the video, channel 989 on your Spectrum Digital tier or at marshfieldmediaaccess.org or at their Facebook page, Marshfield Media Access. We'll have it posted here. We talked about this a while back. People call up angry. Isn't there anything you can do? And it's under that idea that until a crime is committed, you're kind of in so many situations like that, you can't do anything until it's over.
And even then, there's a lot of times where we can't do anything. There's a lot of times where if you send, if you send money through Western Union or through any of those MoneyGrams or those services, just because you're sending it to somebody that you believe is maybe located in Florida, it can truly be picked up by somebody that's in Italy or Pakistan or China. So as long as they have that number, it's not like the money is sent directly to whatever that location is. So and when we're talking international, it's nearly impossible to track down to get video surveillance from, somewhere in Africa is going to be very difficult and trying to work with, and especially with some of these dollar amounts. Granted, some of the dollar amounts that people are victimized by is significant. There's been many that are out tens of thousands of dollars.
But until that happens, there's no crime committed. If somebody calls up and tries to scam you, it's
right.
Just talk, freedom of speech.
Right. Yeah, and the fact that you voluntarily gave your information and then you hope that it's not, used in a to victimize you further. But yeah, it's, so there's, I can't think of any time when I would give out my personal information unless I was calling somebody and just to verify to them who I was, I might have to give the last four of my Social Security number or my mother's maiden name or something like that, but it's all things that I had previously set up through that credit card or through that, company or whatever it is. So there's never a time where if somebody's calling you to share information with you that you should have to necessarily confirm who you are or chance being arrested. I mean, that just doesn't happen. But I mean, they make it sound very believable many times to where somebody could truly be scared and think that something was going to happen.
Well, you made the comment of paperwork too, but I've seen some pretty official looking letterhead from time to time that looked like the real deal until you start looking at the return addresses and some of the phone numbers and you go, I don't know.
Usually if you do a little bit of research, do a little bit of digging online, a lot of the numbers that'll show up or a lot of the addresses that maybe don't exist, to that, return address type of area. I think just doing that extra legwork is beneficial to most consumers.
Talking with Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza and Chief Deputy here, also Pat Zepps, and you can call us 384-2191, 384-2191. Another rash of scams. It's just a matter of not if but when. They'll come around again, and we'll just happen to be in the sweep as it comes by. But when they spoof your number, when it comes up on my caller ID as looking official, like it's from that, is there anything you can do, or is it just, technologically, I suppose you could, but is it worth the effort? I don't know that the FBI or CIA has anything that they're going to share with you at this level just for scams.
Well, and you're probably one of hundreds and hundreds of calls that are going out, and if they can fish one person into giving them some information, they'll call that a success. So, again, with the time and energy that would need to be invested to look into see if that number was legitimate, you're better off if you don't recognize it, let them leave a message. Let them leave a message, try to verify if it's legitimate or not, but absolutely do not give them anything. And like I said, the time and the effort to try to determine if the number's legitimate prior to the crime even being committed, that could be pretty taxing on resources.
Yeah, there's sometimes when it's just, I don't know if it's a matter, I don't like to say whether it's worth going after, but the amount of cost in doing that and the technology that's involved isn't readily at your fingertips at this level. Let's go to the phone. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi. I was listening to the radio, and I noticed that you're talking about scams. And just the other day, I got a telephone call from an unknown number. Now, I have caller ID, so if I don't know the number, I don't answer it. But they did leave a message saying that my Social Security number had suspicious activity. So, well, of course, I didn't call back or anything because I didn't believe it. But I did keep the message on my answering machine, and I have their telephone number on my caller ID. Now, if that would help track down whoever is doing all of this, the police are welcome to that information.
No, thank you for that. This was actually something that I believe was happening was it on Wednesday that you received that?
I don't even remember what day.
Yeah, I think Wednesday there was we received quite a few calls, and we have quite a few information. So if I had to guess right, the number that you have is probably similar to the ones that we received. And the best thing you can do, there's very little that we will do in those situations as long as you're not suffering a loss of any kind, which it sounds like you weren't.
I see that.
Yeah. So, no, you did the right thing by not calling them back, by not falling for this information.
I did keep the telephone number just in case it could be helpful to the police.
Oh, thank you very much for that. But, yeah, I'm glad that you didn't lose anything and you didn't call it back. You did the right thing.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Well, good luck.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
I think
they come in a rash, don't they?
The scams?
Yes.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. I thought you were talking about the calls. We're blowing away what the sheriff gets. Oh, you're
going to rub that in his face, huh?
Wow. I've told him we get quite a few calls, and I don't know if he's listening right now, but I've told him, just to maybe help his ego a little bit, I'd call in for him so he'd at least get, kind of,
somebody
experience a little bit of, what it's like to, have the community so interested in us.
Be a challenging call for them if we play that right.
Yeah. Stump the Sheriff. Should we play that next?
I would love it.
And if he's not listening to this and preparing, that's shame on him.
You can write the script better than I can.
But yeah, you're right. As far as the scams, they really do come in rashes. And I don't know what the methodology is behind it, if they hit just certain area codes. I mean, this could have been something that all of Wisconsin, all of the Midwest, or maybe just, this pocket of central Wisconsin had some mass callings, and it could have been, maybe over the course of just a 15-minute to 1 hour time frame. But we did receive, like I said, numerous calls, and by the sounds of it, I mean, people are catching on enough to where I don't think anyone fell victim to giving out information that they shouldn't have. So that's very good. And I think that it is, when you talked about the spoofing of numbers, I even fall for it, because there's times where either on my work phone or on my, personal phone, I'll get a number coming up, and it doesn't have a caller ID on it, just other than the number. But I mean, it's a 305 or a 207 or a 615 number that are all local numbers. And it makes you think that somebody locally is trying to reach out to you. Well, then you listen, and it ends up being, a scammer or, something advertising something else. So they've really gotten around that. It used to be the 800 numbers that you wouldn't answer, but now, I mean, they're utilizing local numbers to try to trick you into picking up.
Well, the best one I've heard this morning is when they called the assistant chief at his desk at the police station. I mean, these guys really are just computer-generated numbers, just going down with the automatic dialer.
Yeah, and I was a bit shocked, and I understand that happens. But when you start to question them back, and they light you up like I was lit up. I mean, obviously, at that point it's not legitimate. The language was even shocking to me, if that tells you. So, and I worked the road for 17 years.
I've taken in drunks and druggies of all kinds, but this guy really lit me up here.
I was speechless.
I think he took the next day off. He needed a little R&R after that.
Yeah. Like, what did I do?
We'd assign him to desk duty, but he already is.
I know.
Yeah, you would. You're there, too. 384-2191 is our number. We're live on AM 1450 WDLB, coming to you in video here on Marshfield Media Access on Channel 989 on your your Spectrum digital tier there, or you can watch them on their Facebook page, Marshfield Media Access, or at their website as well. And this time of the year, we talked with the mayor about budgets and things like that. News came out that now it looks like they may be able to purchase the property across the street from what is now the law enforcement center. Do you have any, were you pushing for that, or are you just a bystander here? Or, I know you needed more room. That was the presentation you made to the council.
Right. No, it's a good thing. We have... Well, I think it's a good portion of property for the city to gain as a whole, just with its proximity. But as far as temporary storage for the police department, for whether it's large items of evidence, but primarily for our vehicles, for our secondary vehicles, it won't be used for primary first responding vehicles. But for the vehicles that our detectives use, for maybe our ordnance officers or humane officers' vehicles, for any of our emergency response vehicles, such as, like our we have a command vehicle for our SWAT team, and we also have our armored rescue vehicle that we think now might fit in there, but we'll have to do some double checking. I mean, there's some things that. So what that will ultimately do is it'll free up a little bit of space on the west side of the PD, where we have some of the ordnance vehicles. It'll free up, I think, potentially two garage stalls at the police department, and but primarily on the south side of the PD, which is considered the central lot by the city. That should free up quite a few spots in the central lot. So even if we can get maybe 8 to 10 vehicles over there, and in a place to keep them out of the elements during the winter months, I think that'll be a big benefit for the department in the short term. Long term, we are looking that if we do expand our building, we really have a little bit of room to go to the west where we currently park our squads. But if we're going to expand, it's going to have to be to the south, which will be into that central lot. So there's talk of, if that happens in the next 5 to 10 years, we could possibly use that Baltus property as an additional parking lot or something of that sort, because we'll be taking up some of the parking in that central lot.
To your understanding, what is right now the garage area that they have is able to be, you're going to use it as it is for now, just to be inside?
I think so, yeah. Just to keep some of our vehicles out of the elements and be able to allow some of our first responding vehicles into our garage, which right now is occupied by ordnance vehicles and a detective vehicle. So we're still not going to be able to get all of our vehicles in there. And if we have an emergency, I don't want our officers to have to run across the street to the Baltus property to get a squad with lights and siren out of that property. But at least some of our secondary vehicles will be left out of those elements. And one of the busiest lots in the city is that central lot, just with all of the downtown businesses that use it, and with the Charles Apartments being right there and utilizing some of that. So it's pretty much Monday. Fridays are a little different, but Monday through Thursday, it's tough to get a spot in that lot sometimes.
Well, you could have one of those movies that you made here where they run across the street like Miami Vice and slide across the hood and into the car there.
You watch a lot of TV, don't you?
Yeah, but he's referencing a really good show on this one, so we're gonna give him a pass.
I don't know. Well, I can see I'm outnumbered, so.
Good analogy.
Thanks. You guys, I'm telling you that. Talking with Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza, also Assistant Chief Pat Zepps here. You can too. 384-2191, 384-2191 here on this first Friday in November, live on AM 1450 WDLB. AM 1450 WDLB's Insight program here for this first Friday in November. You know that if you're listening live, but you could be watching us here on video and 989 on your Spectrum Digital tier on your television on the City channel. Or you could be, if you're not available to watch that, or maybe you just would rather do it on your own time, you can do it at marshfieldmediaaccess.org or at Marshfield Media Access Facebook page. We will be posted there as well. The videos that we do here at the WDLB studios with the city officials. Second Friday of the month, Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza in here, and he brought along with him Assistant Chief Pat Zepps. Getting into this part of the season here where, as we're talking to you now, we're looking at a cold snap that's been on top of us. Does it really, I hear articles about crime going up when the heat of the summer, because I guess people are angry. I don't know, that they're not comfortable, but it's just as uncomfortable in the winter, but stay inside. Does it drop off a little bit for you?
A little bit. I think people are a lot more mobile in the summer or the warmer months. People who have mischief or crime committing on their minds and maybe don't have access to a vehicle are probably less likely to go very far when it's below freezing or below zero. But it still happens, and we still have to stay aware and stay on our toes when it comes to checking buildings, monitoring, vehicles that are maybe unlocked and getting a hold of the owner to lock it or locking it. I think that there's a lot of, but it can slow down a little bit. But it doesn't mean that we have to let our guard down.
I don't have a car with a passcode on the side, and so if you go into the store and leave it running, you either got to have a spare key or a spare fob, or use the spare key in the ignition and then have the fob with you or something along that line. But you see, in this part of the country, it's not unusual for people to want to keep the car warm as they go in and out. But what's your recommendation on that?
I guess I would say, depending on how long you're going to be in the store, I don't see the need to keep it running, personally. I know it's a convenience, and maybe you just want to come back to a warm vehicle, but if you're only in the store for less than 5 minutes, I don't think your vehicle's going to cool off that much. It's always a safety. In the past, we've had vehicles be stolen that were left running or left warming up, and if they're not secured. So if you can't secure it or if you can't lock it while it's running, just don't do it. I would say I don't think it's worth the gain that you're hoping to get out of it, which is, to come into a warm vehicle. Your engine should still heat up the vehicle pretty well.
Would you find that most of it is people just trying to get from point A to point B without being froze, or that there's a real purpose behind this of car theft?
I would say it's more just joyriding type of thing is what we see around here. Most of the stolen vehicles are recovered and are recovered fairly locally. We had probably, I want to say maybe 5-6 years ago, we had a rash of stolen vehicles that started pretty much one evening, and they were looking for vehicles that were running. Found a couple of them running outside of local establishments. Found a couple of work vehicles that had the keys left in them, and they took them. So you could almost follow the path of destruction that was caused, or the path of stealing these that was caused, because usually when you'd have another one that was reported missing, within a couple blocks of that, you would find the previous stolen vehicle. But it doesn't happen frequently, but it does happen. And when that happened, that was in January, I think. So, I mean, it happens during the winter as well.
Now, as I recall, you make plot maps of incidents. Is that on a regular basis, fairly regular basis, things that happen around the city that I've seen it posted to your Facebook page?
Yeah, that's something that we do. We can do instantaneous. We could do it right now if we wanted to, just on what we did, what's happened, as far as calls for service or traffic stops in the last week, the last month, the last 5 years. But yeah, we utilize a software program that uploads all of our data to that on I believe twice a day. And it keeps pretty accurate information. So we try to push that out whenever we can, just kind of as an FYI. But people can actually, and maybe that's something we should push out on our social media, but people can actually access that on their own without us pushing it out at any point, just by going to crimereports.com and typing in our area code.
Crimereports.com.
Yep.
That answered another question, which is, do you have to sit down and plot this out? Or the software does it for you? Like, say you can take away and say, stops, and specify what we want the map to show.
Yeah, you can filter through all of that, but it uploads that data from our records management system on a daily basis.
How much have you, speaking of records management, come into problems with video storage? Or have you had any with the amount of space that it takes?
Yeah, we've gotten a lot better in that area. Our prior system, we were kind of capped because we did our storage through the city. Probably within a year's time, we were approaching 80 to 90% full. But with the newer system now, evidence.com, which we have through Axon, we have cloud-based storage, so we don't have that problem anymore.
Who gets to look at that? And the reason I ask is because your service was picked up by television when you had a couple of incidents here taking somebody down with a beanbag and showing things like, I'm like, man, they got that in a hurry. So it was within a few days it was on their television show. And is that something that they are able to tap into, or is it come from them or come from you, or how did that happen?
That initially came from us. We had pushed it out just as, for some transparency and for community information, because there's a lot of calls about the incident and a lot of, I guess, communication regarding it. So we just wanted to get the story out, and once we pushed the story out and some of the video out is when some of those national stations picked it up and asked if they could share it.
Without being in a digital world here, the degrading of each copy doesn't seem to be as what it once was. By the time you get about the fifth copy years ago, it was so blurry you couldn't tell anybody in the picture. Yeah,
no, it's really come a long ways, and it comes at a cost. It's expensive to utilize the the cloud storage and the maintenance of it. And I've even thought, okay, so if we would go away from this in, say, 5 or 6 years and try something different, is that, all that storage or all that media or video footage that's up in the cloud, is that ours, and how do we just have access to that continually since we had placed it there, or now are we still going to have to pay a fee for them to store it for us, or are they going to somehow transfer it to us and then we'll have to store it locally? So there's been some of the, and I don't have any intentions of going away from this service. We've been happy with it, but you start thinking of those things like, okay, if we ever would, now how hard is it to access? But no, the quality is pretty good. I know that sometimes when we post pictures of a retail theft or of a surveillance picture that we're trying to identify somebody in, some people out on social media will say, that business needs to update their cameras, or I wish they would update their cameras, or it looks like their cameras are from the 70s or something. It's varying degrees, I guess, of quality of picture, and sometimes it looks better watching it live than when you actually do record it. But I think with all the HD quality that we see nowadays on TV and everything, if you have something that just has a little pixelation or blurriness to it, it's deemed to be of not good quality. But you can actually look at some of the older closed circuit pictures that we've had in the past, or even some of our old mug photos, and you think, oh my gosh, that's we're so far ahead now, even with some of the quality being not what it is.
What jurisdiction do you have to go to businesses or places to procure video from them? I mean, are most people just happy to do it, or do you have to get some sort of document in order to force them to give it to you, or can you do that?
It all depends on what the case is. I mean, in most cases, the businesses are very accommodating and willing to share. But if we believe that there was some video evidence of a case and the business wasn't willing to share, we could write a subpoena for that evidence to see if a judge would agree that we have the right to go in and seize it, and then we would do just that. But for the most part, I can't think of any times when we haven't been able to elicit some degree of cooperation from a business or something. A lot of times they just don't want to be advertised as being the ones that, but I mean, it depends. I mean, if it's inside of a bar and I mean, nobody else is going to have that video other than maybe somebody on their cell phone. But one of the nice things with the software program that Pat mentioned and the cloud storage that we have is now an officer can go into, say there was a bar fight or maybe a theft that happened within a grocery store that somebody actually did catch either on their cell phone or on the video surveillance from the store, rather than having to save a copy of that with whatever player is going to play that, because most camera systems are very unique than, from others. We're able to give them an email or a cell phone number to just forward that clip of video to our cloud storage, and it automatically saves it there as evidence, so we don't actually even have to take somebody's cell phone into hand or take possession of it or worry about having to have a DVD of that recording from that grocery store or that bar. It can just be shared electronically with us through that cloud storage.
Well, the size of that video file, though, isn't something you can email. I mean, you'd almost have to give them an address like a Dropbox or a FTP site or something.
Yeah, that's what they do. They'll just upload it right to that site, and we're just pretty much sending them a link to then send the video to that link, and it does, pretty much just upload access to that.
Talking with Marshfield Police Chief Rick Gramza, Assistant Chief Pat Zepps, also here to take your calls, 384-2191, 384-2191, live here on WDLB. You're watching us on Marshfield Media Access, $9.89 on your Spectrum digital tier, or at their website, Marshfield Media Access, or on their Facebook page. We talked about video. We're talking about security camera and video, and with the body cameras and all of that. All the storage and this whole new, everybody wants to see everything. What has, now that we've shaken out here a little bit, what is your policy on when that has to be on, when an officer makes contact?
Not in the bathroom. No.
No, we don't want that.
Yeah.
That was, what was that movie with Leslie, where he was a police guy, Frank Drummond, and he would go
Leslie
in,
Nielsen.
Yeah, Leslie Nielsen, and he's in there with the lavalier mic on, and he's still got it on at the urinal.
Believe it or not, Jeff, that's happened. And when officers come feverishly running down the hallway asking me to delete a video, that's generally what it is. I don't look at that video, of course. I simply take their word for it and delete it.
Forgot to shut it off. Huh? Is it triggered? Is it automatic, or is it something that you have to turn on and off?
Generally, they turn it on and off. It can be triggered with the squad lights because it is synced to our squad mobile. But if they're out in the field and they're away from the squad, that's something that they manually turn on.
What's the precedent? What's the policy?
The precedent is any type of contact with the community that could result in something. So they do have some discretion in that area. For instance, if they're doing a business walkthrough, do we want them to record the whole business walkthrough? There's some discretion there, but generally any interaction with the community in an official capacity, they're going to have the body camera on.
How often do you have attorneys requesting evidence for that?
Just for the normal, like walkthrough, like just generic, or because of a case?
Obviously, if it went to some sort of trial, then, which are very few that they go that far, even when they get there, they plead out. If you've ever done jury duty, you know, it gets knocked down before they get to the courtroom. But there is an opportunity for an attorney to get that from you as evidence of a situation.
Right.
But I guess what you're saying here is there are normally that kind of situations that often.
There's a lot, even before it goes to trial. I mean, we have a lot of cases. I mean, we send, probably between municipal court and circuit court. I mean, we probably send, if I had to guess, probably 7 to 8, probably 5,000 cases between municipal court and circuit court to them, and there's video evidence on each of those cases. So oftentimes a defense attorney will want to see the video to see if they should fight it or if they should try to get a plea, if they should try to negotiate maybe a lesser charge or something. So we probably get, if I had to guess, Lori Krickstrom, who's our staff services supervisor, she records, or she I guess completes most of the open records requests for us. But if I had to guess, she's probably sending video. And the nice thing with this cloud storage as well is we just have to send them a link, and then they can just watch it off of the cloud instead, because we used to have to burn DVDs or something and send them to the DA and the defense. And some of our big cases, so if we responded to a call for service and we had 4 squads there and 4 officers there, and maybe 2 people were arrested, we're going to have body cameras of 4 officers. We're going to have squad cameras of 4 officers. We're going to minimally have 2 officers be with those 2 arrested people through the end of our contact with them. We're going to have surveillance from inside of the police department where that individual was. We're going to have, maybe if we interviewed them, we're going to have a recording of that interview, and then we're going to have, if they were transported down to jail, we're going to have the recording of the transport showing that they safely made it down to jail. So we've had cases where we've had over 30 DVDs on one case sent to the DA and then to the defense attorney, and that takes a lot of time to burn those or to record those. So now all we need to do is just send them a link to that cloud, and we've made up a file in that cloud of all of those recordings, and then they can just watch it remotely from wherever they are just by logging in. So it's really been a benefit in that sense to be able to share things remotely like that instead of having to burn that many copies of the DVD, because like you said, a lot of those cases never make it to trial or will get pled down. Sometimes those 30 DVDs will never get watched, but yet it took us 5 hours to prepare that case to send.
Well, since the implementation of body cam and video now, this is kind of, what I'm hearing is it's kind of shaken down a little bit to where you're getting your processes to the point where it's not as time consuming and hardware consuming as it once was, because you're able to transfer these files a lot more easily from place to place, and people need to see them and they can access them on their own without getting you involved.
Yeah, and it's something that, I don't know, I think we can safely say 7 years ago, we probably never even thought that. I mean, we had squad video that we would have to be concerned about, and
With a VHS tape?
Yeah, we had that when we started.
earlier we did, yeah.
We had one of them.
We had VHS-C tapes. I think one had a VHS-C and one maybe had was it 8mm tapes that were in some of the old camcorders?
It was a big giant thing that sat on the dashboard and blocked 90% of your view. So we've really come a long way as far as squad safety.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, and with our older squad cameras, the more recent ones, all we had on our person before the body cams was just a microphone. So all you would catch was, whatever the squad
audio,
caught.
yeah.
So, I mean, if you would end up getting in a foot pursuit with somebody, you'd probably catch some audio of that. But then once that got out of range, which was often maybe 200 yards or so, then you wouldn't have anything other than where now at least you'll have, what the officer is putting in their report, parallels, what is being seen, in that body cam footage.
Talking with the Marshfield PD, Police Chief Rick Gramza, Assistant Chief Pat Zepps here about the realities of the world as opposed to what you see on TV here with all the camera footage and how it all works, what happens in real life here in our community. You can join in, 384-2191, 384-2191 here on WDLB. WDLB's Inside program here this first Friday in the month of November. As the second Friday of the month, we talk with Marshfield PD, Chief Gramza in here, Assistant Chief Pat Zepps as well. And as you're watching us here, some of this may already be resolved, I always say, because you're watching it for a month after we've actually had the program here in video on 989 on your Spectrum digital tier, or if you're not a cable subscriber, you can watch the video either way at marshfieldmediaaccess.org or on their page. Facebook, Marshfield Media Access. This time of the year, we've got snow emergencies and things like that that are going to be on the forefront coming up here, where you can't park certain times, certain days, and what that means. But there's also been somewhat of a change in the overnight parking in general, from what I understand.
Yeah, November 1st, we always put in place our overnight parking regulations where you can't park on the streets between 2:30 in the morning and 6 in the morning. Otherwise, you could get a parking ticket. But yeah, the director at City Garage, or the streets superintendent, recently changed his snow emergencies and put different degrees of snow emergency out there. Some would allow people to still be parked in that downtown bid district. Some would not, and I guess it depends on that forecast, and it usually their snow emergency policy now goes into detail as to when they're going to go out and plow, and at roughly at what times within the ending of the snowfall or throughout the snowfall. So he's really done a good job in getting that information not only shared out with the community, but shared with us as well, so that we can be on the same page when it comes to getting cars off the street when a snow emergency is in place. But yeah, as far as the winter months, it's for as long as we've been here, we've had overnight parking regulations, but it's it's probably for the last 15 years been that you can't park overnight during those winter months, that November 1st through April 30th.
Well, obviously in the winter, but what's the point of parking regulations in general overnight?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, so what if the cars are in front of my house overnight? I mean, getting the cars off the street, other than snow.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the issue?
I think, well, it's not like that right now. I mean, we don't have overnight parking regulations during the summer months. Communities that do, a lot of times they want to keep the community clean, and they have the street sweepers go out and cleaning the streets during those summer months, and it's difficult to do that at times when vehicles are parked there. You're then going around it, and it's more of an obstacle. A lot of times that's why they do alternate side parking, so you can not only clean the streets, but you can still scrape them pretty good in the winter when there's snowfall. So but yeah, a lot of times they just don't, some communities just don't like vehicles being parked. They think at least if vehicles are parked on the street, they're more susceptible to somebody maybe vandalizing them or maybe stealing from them if they're not secured. there's a lot of reasons why communities do that.
When there's snow emergency or regulations, is the plow driver given instructions to let you know when something's in his way, or do your officers just go around and catch them as they can?
I'd say both. If there's a snow emergency called, a press release will go out. We'll push it out through the police department. The city will push it out as far as notifying individuals. Usually you guys will make mention of there being a snow emergency. Usually the television stations will say if a snow emergency is in place. Once it's in place, we'll give ample time for people to move their vehicles. You'll usually come out a couple hours in advance saying a snow emergency will be from 3 p.m. until 3 p.m. the following day. And then usually by 4 in the afternoon, we go out and we start ticketing those vehicles that are not moved. And if they end up being in the way, we'll usually wait to have a snowplow driver call us, or the street superintendent, Dean Schiller. He'll give us a call and ask us to have vehicles towed if necessary.
And officers are very good at that, too. We'll check license plates. We'll try to get a hold of the owner to get the car moved. The objective is not to go out and write tickets. Unfortunately, that's part of it if they don't move it. The objective is just to get the cars off the street so we can get it cleaned.
Do you have a cycle of tow truck people that you are on call with that can remove them for you?
There's dispatch has a list of that, and we do use a rotation on that.
Okay. Is that a shift commander decision, or are they involved at all in any of that removal?
As far as if the car is removed?
Yes.
Yeah, that would typically be a shift commander decision. If we've exhausted all reasonable efforts to get a hold of the owner to have the car moved, then that would be a decision the shift commander can make to have it towed.
Talking with PD here from Marshfield, Chief Rick Gramza, Assistant Chief Pat Zepps, here as we kind of run down the last minutes of the program here, wrapping up the hour. Talking about this time of the year, of course, school buses have always been on the road since the beginning of the school season, and we're into November now. It's been a couple of months, but has there been a rash of, or is it just that people are still not aware of what's required around a school bus?
Yeah, I think, again, there's a learning curve when the school bus season starts, when school's back. And as a department, we've always taken that very seriously as far as enforcing speed in the school zones and enforcing those bus passing complaints. We have a great relationship with the Marshfield Bus Service, so they'll notify us of those bus passing complaints. And unfortunately, those can result in a fairly hefty fine of $250, and that's just because we do take it very seriously.
Is there cameras on those? Can they do a license plate?
They can, and they do provide us that video.
Is that another one that goes onto your cloud storage?
Potentially, it could go on to the cloud storage as evidence, yeah.
But obviously, it's only if an evidentiary in case of some sort of a law enforcement or trial thing, or
yeah, often we'll look at the video, we'll see if it looks intentional or if it was incidental. We'll call the individual. You can usually tell by the video. I mean, if somebody's just sick of sitting there and they intentionally go past, if they're southbound in the vehicle, if the school bus is northbound, and you're stopped, the appropriate distance, and it's taking longer, or you think, well, I can safely pass because there's no houses, maybe on that west side of the road, so I can safely pass because they're probably dropping kids off on the east side of the road for those east side houses. The expectation is you still stop and you remain stopped until that stop sign and the lights are off and the stop sign is retracted. So if it looks like it's intentional, somebody's going to get cited on that. If it looks as though they just couldn't stop in time and the lights and stop sign came out and they just couldn't stop in time, we'll usually give them a warning.
Well, it's interesting to note for people who get into that situation that it's not just the bus driver's eyes that are looking at your plate. There's a video that can be reviewed on that, and so it's not a good idea to try it.
Can be fairly compelling if someone denies doing it, sure. That's a useful tool.
Does this look like you?
Yeah, I mean, you could really just, that's the thing with technology these days is it's no longer just my word against yours. It's, there's usually a video or some sort of photographic evidence that's going to, show the proof. And that's where a lot of, down in Illinois, most of the intersections, in the Chicagoland area have cameras on them. And if somebody goes through a red light, I mean, it's taking pictures of of you going through that red light.
That's got to be cumbersome, though, too, to go through all of that. I mean, unless you have, like you were talking about, software that brings up that information as opposed to watching hours of video.
Yeah, I think it just takes pictures when there's a violation, but it recognizes a violation based on the sensors of the direction of the vehicles and the direction the vehicle shouldn't be coming from based on it being a red light. So,
do we have anything like that here?
I don't know if
would
we
you
can
like to
tell
know?
that.
Yes, I would, because over at 4th and Peach, you look at that staring at me, and I'm thinking, there's an eye in the
Just
sky
wave,
there.
just wave with all your fingers.
We've got a few questions on 4th and Peach.
All your fingers, yeah, that's exactly right. You're number one with me. What is that? Is that really a camera?
We don't have time, Joe.
Oh.
It's about time you wrap up.
I know, we're getting close here, but inquiring minds want to know.
It's actually another sensor to trip the light if there's a backup of vehicles there. When they redid that intersection, I don't know if the in-ground sensors were put in or not, so this is just a way for it to sense vehicles maybe piling up at a red light to where it would trigger the exchange, but it's not a camera.
So
Yet.
Yeah.
I didn't wave to you for any
It
purpose.
could be changed to a camera, but it is not currently a camera.
All right, Marshfield PD Chief Rick Gramza, Assistant Chief Pat Zepps here. Good to talk to you guys today. I'm glad you avail yourself to us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, here on AM 1450 WDLB's Insight program this Friday in November, second Friday of the month, is when we talk with Marshfield PD. And you can watch us at Marshfield Media Access on their website or on their Facebook page. If you don't have the Spectrum Digital tier, Channel 989, the city channels, where we are also available throughout the month, with not only the PD, but also the Wood County Sheriff, Marshfield Mayor Bob McManus, and now the Wood County Board President is also available here once a month. So be watching for us in rotation here on 989 or on your Facebook page.